We did want to talk about the Packers defensive line, and we talked about how great we feel like the Broncos defensive line and their chemistry is coming together. But for as much as there are things to point to in this Packers season that are positives, a defensive line is not nearly as much of a positive as we believe it should be, especially for a unit that has invested so many high draft picks into what makes up their defensive line, including some of their outside linebackers and the edge rushers. What is going on with the Packers defensive line right now? Because when I am looking just at like overall numbers, pass rush specifically, I looked up pass rush numbers. Week 1 against Philadelphia, 55.6 pass rush grade as a team. Week 2 against Indianapolis, 50.0 as a team. Week 3, all right, 75.0. Okay, nice. It's against the Tennessee Titans. All right. And then week 4 against the Minnesota Vikings, 45.6 passing grade as a team. They have a 56.1 pass rushing grade through 4 weeks, which is 28th in the NFL, and just a 26.8 pass rush win percentage as a team as well. Once again, 28th in the NFL. Ollie, it feels like it should not be this way. Again, for as much as they have invested into the defensive line, when you've watched the Packers, what's going on here? What's a big culprit for why they haven't been able to have more success on the defensive line?
Yeah, I think it's pretty concerning. And look, there's plenty of caveats you can give. You just reeled off who they've played. Okay, when they play a bad team, it was good. They've had some tough matchups, and there's a new scheme, so there may be some acclimation period there for sure. But when you just watch the tape, there's just not any like juice off the ball, particularly with the edge group. The edge group is the one that I think is most concerning when you go through. I think they're around, when you add up the 4 top edge guys, are around 25, 26 total pressures, somewhere in that realm. That's fewer than Aiden Hutchinson on his own, right? That's just not good enough. With the investment you've paid in these guys in cash and draft capital, it's not good enough. And they've tried to make subtle tweaks throughout the season, but when you just go and watch the Vikings game, they come out of that saying, we want to be a 4-down-and-go team, and we're going to bluff like we're sending pressure every now and then, and we'll send it every once in a while, but really we need you guys to help us take over the game. Okay, that's a tough assignment. The Vikings have 2 really good tackles,
right?
But you're being paid and we're drafted to take over those games. And it's fun beating up on the Titans with 2 rookies and, lack of talent at certain spots and bringing in basically a whole new group. This team wants to win a title. This team wants to be in NFC contention. And at some point to get through the playoffs, you have to win with a 4-man rush. And you can, look through the numbers of every single year, and it's changed ever so slightly because of what we discussed before, that you can send 4, but it looks like 6 and 7 at the line of scrimmage or what have you. But at the end of the day, you have to have a solid pressure rate with a 4-man rush to get close to playing in the Super Bowl and get through the playoffs. Just the reality. And at the moment right now, their 4-man rushes nowhere near good enough. So in the second half against the Vikings, they're like, we're just going to have to tee off. We are getting lit up. These guys aren't even getting close to Donald, and he's just sitting back there for days and picking us apart. So we got to crank up the pressure, which is fine until it's not fine. And I just think when you look through kind of the rumblings underneath the surface with some of the figures, and when you watch the film, there's just a real lack of like boost, torque off the ball. Gary's a concern we mentioned. Van Ness to me is a real concern. They've walked through with Enigbari, which has been a problem. Preston Smith has shown some signs, but nowhere near the production for the cap amount, right? So it's concerning.
Yeah, I look at, when I was watching the defensive line, Gary's still got the juice, but it's hard to find players outside of Rashawn Gary that are really able to just be big-time threats like the second the ball is snapped. Preston Smith, been doing this for a long time. He's got some veteran savvy to him, but even watching him, I remember going back to week 1, I was watching that Eagles game, and there's a couple of reps where he would actually win. Like he would beat his offensive lineman. He would get by him decently quickly. And then I understand, like Jalen Hurts is kind of a mobile quarterback, but to win as quickly as he was able to win and then not really be a threat to bring the quarterback down. Like all of a sudden, there were a couple of reps I'm remembering off the top of my head where, Jalen takes off and he gets out of the pocket and everything, and Preston's like trying to get after him, and there's just no chance that he's going to catch up to Hurts. And maybe you could say here, well, all right, that's a little bit unrealistic, but there's a difference between what Preston Smith was able to do in the past versus sort of what I've seen from him so far this season. He's just not winning and then getting to the quarterback quickly enough. It's just a little bit slower with him being 31 years old. And so I think age is catching up to him a little bit. You mentioned there's been flashes. It hasn't all been bad, but I think the word the phrase lack of juice, it really shows up here. And going to Van Ness as well, this was a player who Green Bay drafted, I think, for their defensive scheme that they were running previously. Like not Hafley's defense, but more of like Barry's defense, where it was this 3 down, multiple, like we're going to be like a completely amoeba defensive line. You don't know where anybody's coming from. All the defensive linemen we have a weight threshold. They have an arm length threshold. We can play them at so many different spots. And I think Van Ness was really alluring to them because he was somebody out of Iowa who he started out as an interior defensive lineman, and he sort of got on the field early at Iowa as an interior defensive lineman. He was a little bit lighter of an interior defensive lineman. If I remember correctly, he was kind of playing around like 285, 290. Then he lost a little bit of weight, and they said, okay, we're going to make you an edge rusher because we feel like you've got a lot of speed to power potential here. You got some good first step juice, so we're going to put you out on the edge. And he was fine. I think he was good at the college level, but he didn't have a ton of production. Then he goes to the combine. He doesn't exactly test as well as we thought he was going to. You and I were chatting about this pre-show, and I was like, wait, didn't he test super well? And sort of. I mean, he had a really good 40-yard dash. He ran a 4.58 40-yard dash, which is 90th percentile for edge rushers. But then 31-inch vertical jump, that's 23rd percentile. 118-inch broad jump, that's 61st percentile. The cone drills were obviously nice for a player that was above 270, but it's not like he showed up at the combine and we went, all right, very easy. This guy's going to stand out as an athlete at the NFL level. And to your point and what we were talking about a little bit earlier, he might think he's a better athlete than he is. And now those were your words. I'm using your words here, but it kind of feels like that with him because he was able to win with speed to power pretty easily at the college level. And I still think he's trying to do that in the NFL, and he's just getting stonewalled. And so now we're not seeing really much of a counter from him. But yeah, Van Ness, Gary, Preston Smith, dig into those guys a little bit more because it feels like it's concerning here for them.
Yeah, and when you just look at the raw figures, and this includes the interior guys too, but I think when you watch them, it becomes really evident that like the concerning part is there's just no collapse or compression of the pocket from the outside parts, which is tough on the interior guys too. And they're running a lot of stunts and they've maxed the blitz rate in certain weeks, and it just feels like they're trying to do maybe too much with everyone in one go. And maybe you want to coach that way and you throw it to everyone in week 1 and you hope by like week 17 it all clicks. I can certainly understand if that's like the viewpoint of what they're taking. But when you just look through the individual players, Van Ness is the one that is just puzzling to me. The usage and then just the individual stuff. Yeah, when I watch him, and he could become a good player. There's certainly players who've had slow starts and can end up being really talented guys. And there was some talent you could see there at the college level you mentioned, just as like an out to in pincer run through your chest guy. You could see where teams would say, okay, we can just plant him out there 20 snaps a game early on in his career, right? We at least will get that compression. We can build a group around him. Maybe he's not a superstar, and hopefully we can add some things to his game year 3, year 4, year 5. The light goes on and we've got an every down, competent, maybe very good player. I could see that was like the idea with him. Now when I watch him with the Packers this season, he's trying to hit people with these like hezzy moves and these stutter steps. It's like, who is this guy? Who thought this was a good idea? He doesn't have there's no oomph off the ball with the guy. And he's also not, as you said, converting speed to power a way where it's like so concerning he's trying the other things, I guess, because it's not like he is erupting people when he arrives at the point of the attack. But you would just think it would be so simple with him to say, your job for 20 reps a game is to set wide and run through someone's chest and compress the pocket from one side. And we'll have Rashawn firing off the ball the other way. And so we get speed one side, power the other, and we think we can make the pocket fold. Just, basically doing that. And we can maybe do some more creative, cool things around those two basic principles that we have. And yet he's coming off the ball and trying to be like this really nuanced, different, twitched up rusher. That he just isn't that guy in the NFL. I don't know if he thinks he's a better athlete, what they've asked him to do, asking him to do too much, adding different things on. But it just, to me, would make way more sense to simplify his game. The same with Gary. I think that there seems to be maybe a slight physical thing with him. He doesn't look as explosive week to week. He's not getting off the ball to me as quickly as he has in the past. They are asking him to do more than they have done previously when he was at his best under Joe Barry. And I have to admire you for trying to put a philosophy to what Joe Barry was trying to do there for a couple of seasons. Very kind of you for Mr. Barry. But what he did best, Joe Barry, was say, your best thing is running through a guy's face and trying to drive inside their arm. I will set you wider than I traditionally would do, drive you on an arc, and you can just attack into the face and the feet of the quarterback. That's what you're going to do. And if you don't get there, you'll dump truck someone and we'll pin someone around you, and we'll get a second guy rushing around to close out the quarterback and flush them to their left. That was like a really basic thing they did with Gary. The numbers went through the roof. The performances went through the roof. Why you would ever want to mess with that after handing the guy the contract, I have absolutely no idea. I get wanting to evolve the defense, put your own style on, but the rest of the group is nowhere near at a level where you'd want to ding your best player, who is one of the best players in his position in the NFL, make him slightly worse to this year having a pretty, he's struggling to start the season, to try and help out the collective when those guys aren't anywhere near at that level right now.
So when we criticize on this show, we want to come up with solutions, right? We solved the Mazi Smith problem last week before Thursday Night Football. They watched the show. They heard us talking about Mazi Smith and how he hasn't been good at run defense. And you and I were on here and we were talking about, hey, maybe an attacking style is better for him just as a run defender. Not saying, all right, we're going to put you at shade nose, or we're going to pitch you as a 3-tech defense tackle. Not this, all right, we want you to hold the line of scrimmage type of thing, but we want you to defend the run by attacking the run. And what did he do against the New York Giants? Well, he made John Michael Schmidt's life a living hell, and that's exactly what he did. And I think it is really funny, as like sort of like a side point, Ollie. I went back and I watched that game because I was like, holy cow, 88.5 run defense grade from Mazi Smith. Like, that's career high. It's not even close career highs for him, which is great to see. So I had to go back and watch the film for it. There are multiple reps where Mazi, it is a run play. He is defending the run. And you can tell he just immediately gets into John Michael Schmitz, drives him 3 or 4 yards back. Sometimes the running back with the ball is like beyond the play. Like, he's 3 or 4 yards away from him at that point. But Mazi Smith was just like, my job as a run defender is to get this center into the backfield. And it was like, all right, at least we got some progress here. At least you're disrupting things a little bit. But there were snaps where he wasn't even focused on, okay, the ball carrier is actually next to me. Let me stack and shed this guy real quick and go make the tackle. He was so focused on, I'm getting into the backfield. So just as a tangent, that was hilarious to see. But what's a solution for the Packers? Maybe something a little bit different. You just mentioned there, like for Gary, you don't know why that you would change that. Is that something that you just wish Hafley would go back to? Because it's a new defensive coordinator. We're only 4 weeks in. He's kind of figuring this out with his defensive line as it is, and so that's definitely understandable. But now, again, you've got a 4-game sample size of most of what you're doing is not working. Certainly to the standard that even a guy like Rashawn Gary has had before in this league. So is it sort of, would your suggestion be, hey, let's refocus what we're doing on this defensive line, make Gary kind of that focal point again, have him tee off, and then we'll figure things out with the rest of the guys? I know it's more of an even front versus an odd front in what Barry was running over the last couple of years, but what's your thoughts there? What could the solution potentially be for the Packers?
Yeah, it's tricky because you can't build the pass rush in a vacuum, though it may be the most valuable thing you would want to have. They got issues at corner, so they didn't want to blitz to open the week, right? Because they got issues at corner, they're getting lit up. They're like, well, we're going to have to blitz. They've got real problems at linebacker if those guys aren't blitzing. So that's often why they blitz them so much, because it's like, well, this is the best thing these guys do for us. We need Quaid to be around the line of scrimmage because in space he's having a really difficult time. So, if you start trying to retrofit what you're doing with your pass rush, then all of a sudden you're exposing issues you've been trying to kind of cover up and maximize other players elsewhere on the defense, right? So it becomes really difficult. I do think there is an element of we are trying to do too much. We are trying to be more game plan and scheme based than we are putting our players in a role that like maximizes their skills one-on-one. The first thing I would just take Lucas Van Ness. I would do the what's the movie thing where they tape the eyes open, and I would just sit him in front of Joey Bosa film, and I'd say for 24 hours a day, you watch Joey Bosa film. You can have a sleep on Saturday to get ready for Sunday, because you need to watch this man who spent the bulk of his career, the peak years, and still playing a good level when healthy. It was just half man attack every time. It was either through the chest or rib, and he would just tee off and do that over and over and over again, and you would get negative plays in the run game because that was how he was attacking, but the positives were so good that if we can even get you 50%, 55% of the way there, that is a huge win for us for where it started early in the career. And they got a get right game. Same thing as Mousy had, right? He gets John Michael Schmidt, unbelievable get right game for him with just the one-on-one matchup. Same with what they have coming up this week. Is if there's ever a time to feel like, well, we can probably win one-on-ones, let's simplify this for the week and let's, get everyone's mojo going. This would be the week to try it.
I didn't know that we were going to get a Bird Box reference here in this show, but I do think that it's appropriate of, hey, you just watch this film, be this player. So there we go. It's a little bit of a solution for Packers fans.